I believe that the Bible alludes to the power and the miraculousness of language. And I'm going to read some verses to you to show you what I'm talking about. So it starts in Genesis. All right, so think about Genesis 1. How does it start? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And how did he do that? How did he create? He created by speaking it. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And then not only did he speak it into existence, but then he named it. God called the light day, and he called the darkness night. So naming things, that's another aspect of language, right? So God spoke it into existence, and then he named it. Then God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." And then God named it. He called the expanse heaven. And then God said, "Let the waters below the heavens be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And then he named it. He called the dry land earth, and he called the waters the seas. And then God said, "Let the earth sprout vegetation," and it was so. And then God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and they shall serve as signs and for seasons and for days and for years." And it was so. And that is when God spoke time into existence. Then God said, "Let the waters teem with swarms of living creatures, and let the birds fly in the earth." And it was so. And God blessed them by saying, "Be fruitful and multiply." And then God said, "Let the earth produce living creatures according to their kind, livestock, crawling things, animals on the earth." And it was so. And then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image according to our likeness." And then he blessed them by saying to them, "Be fruitful and multiply." So you can see here in the very beginning of the New Testament, the creative power of language. When God wanted to create things, he spoke it into existence. So this is the beginning of the power of language that we see right here in the very beginning, Genesis 1:1. All right. Then in the beginning of the New Testament, we see it as well. This is in John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word. What is a word? A word is a part of language. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And who's he talking about? What's he talking about there? He's talking about Jesus. And if you doubt that, look at verse 14. He says, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we saw his glory as of the only Son of the Father, full of grace and truth." So John is equating Jesus to a piece of language. So we see the power of language right there. Okay, and then in Romans, Paul tells us this in Romans 10. But what does it say? "The word is near you, in your mouth and in your heart." That is the word of faith with which we are preaching. That if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord, so confession is a kind of language speaking, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart a person believes, resulting in righteousness, and with the mouth he confesses, resulting in salvation. So we see here that the power of salvation is in language, is in our words. Then Proverbs 18:21 tells us that death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit for good or bad. So here we see that the tongue has power over death and life. In Matthew 12, Jesus tells us this. "But I tell you that for every careless word that people speak, they will give an account of it on the day of judgment. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned." So here is Jesus himself telling us about the power of language. And he is saying that within our words is the power of justification or condemnation. Jesus said that himself. All right. So we see from these scriptures the power of language that God has given to language. It has creative power. It can save or it can kill. It can justify or it can condemn. Language is very powerful. It is very important.